Kia ora koutou. Hey, I'm Mike from Surge.coach. We partner with leaders to maximize your organization's potential. We are going to focus on the values of our business agility model and how that comes into the business agility radar. So what is in this for you? You will be able to understand what makes up the business agility radar and for what reason. What problem is it actually solving? You'll then be able to go to your organization and measure it yourself, allowing you to have a high-level current state analysis. This current state analysis will allow you to set objectives, outcomes, and ways of measuring success towards business agility. It'll also allow you not to waste time in areas that probably isn't the right focus, and we'll get into that very shortly. We know that the world has changed. It's forever changing. It's going through evolution. And we know that the word VUCA or VUCA is said quite a lot. And that's for good reason. We are finding that the world is volatile, i.e. the speed and the rate of change is forever increasing. We know that there are a lot of surprises that come up in the market. COVID-19 was a surprise, and we are most likely going to get more surprises. So it's uncertain. The future is uncertain. We are moving into a complex world. It's multifaceted. Now, what does this mean for organizations? What it means is we're going to find more and more connections between other organizations and industries. That is going to make competitive advantage much more difficult in the future. Ambiguity. Ideal versus actual. It is getting to a point now where planning is getting too hard to actually even have any value. Mintzberg in 1994 said that strategic planning should be phased out. It's still around, and yet he predicted in 1994 this decline in competitive advantage from strategic planning. And we're seeing it every year getting less and less of an advantage to do, right? So how do we help and how do we move our organizations to deal with a VUCA environment or a VUCA environment? First of all, we're going to have vision. We're going to have a vision for the future. That vision of the future is like a North Star or a purpose or some form of future state that is your current direction you're aiming towards. We're going to understand that the world is going to change and there will be surprises, and it's okay. We're going to have frameworks, and we're going to have clarity around how complex the environment is. And lastly, we're going to have agility. Our delivery models are going to be flexible, they're going to adapt to the environment, and they're going to respond to customer demands. So VUCA can be fixed with VUCA. Very simple, right? So let's go through the 4 different values that Surge has in its business agility model. If we talk about strategic planning for a moment, how does 36-month strategy plan sound? Can you imagine 3 years ago what your life was like? Is it different to today? I bet it is. It's almost guaranteed to be just due to COVID-19, let alone due to Uber disrupting the market. And Uber has tried many things. Uber's got into couriers. So when you think about Uber couriers, Uber itself, the taxi service, Uber Eats, they're just disrupting the market constantly. And they're not the only ones. We are going to find many, many startups that have a lower barrier to entry to disrupt your industry. Incumbents will need to adapt. Variation is this really weird thing. I always say that I've got a phone that I do not need, but I seem to constantly be upgrading it. My phone now has more technology than what landed us on the moon. Now, when we think about that, it means that the customer has more access to greater variable products. Keep that in your mind. And globalization. Now, globalization, people say, started in the 70s. It definitely did. However, what we found is that since 2010, it's become almost a one world system for global companies. They are dominating. And the barrier to entries to new companies trying to do similar things is decreasing. And what we're finding as well is that countries like New Zealand and Australia, who were quite segmented from the global market, are now becoming very involved in the global market and are losing. They're losing mostly due to the fact that a lot of the industry growth is in technology, which with my fiber connection, we could do anything. So when you think about that, how can your organization leverage not only its location, but leverage everything inside of New Zealand with fiber connections, with the human capital and assets that we've got here, and with our connections and trade networks. So the market kept evolving. There's nothing we can do about this. It will continue to evolve. Strategic planning is slow. It's not motivating. Why is it not motivating? It's not motivating because initiatives normally come from the top without a purpose. They're telling people what to do and almost how to do it in some organizations. They may have some controlled innovation. So if you ever had a controlled Friday Innovation Day or innovation sprint, you'll find that they're not actually as innovative as you think they are. Creativity does not come through planning. It comes from almost downtime, going for a walk. Whereas strategic agility is focusing on an emergent strategy. It's understanding that things are going to change and therefore we must position ourselves to adapt to things that may change. It really is intrinsically motivating because there's no way someone up the top can actually make an initiative plan that will allow enough speed of the market from the knowledge workers. So you have to empower the knowledge workers. It creates continuous improvement and continuous innovation. Why is that? That happens because those knowledge workers, because they've been empowered, they make decisions on the floor when they need to, and that allows them to pivot very quickly instead of having to go up the hierarchy and down the hierarchy to get any decision made, which is very demotivating for most workers. Now, we're not saying that strategic planning is not valuable. We're just saying that strategic agility is more valuable. Organizations that have been fine, the stock price has been going up, they've had a competitive advantage, you got to remember, your customer is ready for change. Having a vision allows your organization to focus on that why. People don't buy the solution. They buy based on the problem that it solves for them. What is the problem it's solving? However, there's a lot of competition on problem solving. So most people, especially in worlds with adequate wages, will focus on companies that they want to deal with. The why, the purpose behind their brand. Are they sustainable? Are they feeding the children? All these little nuances really help people make good decisions. The specialization, that used to work really well. It used to make real sense. In specialization, you would have salespeople, you'd have marketing people, customer service, technology departments. This made sense when efficiency was king. Now, when was efficiency king? Probably all the way from 1920s all the way up to 1980s. Because if you could do something cheaper than your competition and scale faster than they can by reducing your costs and lowering the price, which increases the barrier to entry, you are onto a winning formula. In Frederic Laloux's book, Reinventing Organizations, you could call that the orange. In the orange culture, you'll find that efficiency can work really well, especially if it's outcome driven. But as you know, the value is at the end. If you've got an amazing finance department, an amazing customer service team, but your operations team is lagging behind, then you've got waste in your system. And that's why we had all those big lean transformations, especially in the 90s, because they were realizing that getting to the value at the end was more important. The problem we've got at the moment is Generation Z are coming of age. They are already in their early 20s now. And what we're finding from them is they already know they can't buy a house. They already know that they're not going to get a CEO position because we've removed all the middle layer of management. There's no way of moving up the chain for them. They want more. They want purpose. They want to make sure they've put a ding in the universe. And if you're a leader who's struggling with people who are not motivated, think about your vision, not your plan. We've got a globalized workforce now. I can hire almost anything that's not manufacturing, but I can hire manufacturing as well if I wanted to. But if I want to have it made in New Zealand, I can hire every other industry outside of New Zealand. It's very easy to collaborate. And since COVID-19, we have found that this is growing exponentially. I personally have had contacts from Singapore, Thailand, North America, and Europe. I could not imagine working on a different time frame, but if you want that, you can have that. Now, if you're living in Wellington in New Zealand, which is the capital here in New Zealand, you only had a real choice between some minor private companies and the government. Now you have access to Google, Yahoo, Facebook, all these wonderful companies. And look, open knowledge share is now really important. Why is that important? If you don't have open knowledge share, you will struggle to adapt to your environment quickly. Your competitive advantage will decrease. People will leave and their intellectual property will leave with them. So not only are we losing people, we're also losing the ability to offload that knowledge to somebody else. We need to have open knowledge share. Functional silos, they had a higher cost of delivery. They had low motivation. And we knew this. We knew this 100 years ago. This interesting chap called Karl Marx, and I always say I ignore his manifesto, but I focus on his behavioral science, especially around alienation. Now, Karl Marx stipulated quite bluntly that if you alienate a worker from their family, from the customer, and from the purpose, you will find a demotivated staff member. And we are seeing just that now. For things that cannot be automated by machines and technology, we need those people to love what they do. So we need them closer to the customer, and we need them to own their work, and most likely we need them actually closer to their families. That work-life balance makes total sense. Some quick example on the power of a crowd versus specialization. And this is an old example, but I quite like it. So Francis Galton was a country fair in 1906. So the story goes. And to be honest, I've never quite believed this story. It's 1906. I'm sure a whole bunch of fibbings going on. He came across a competition that you had to guess the weight of an ox. 787 guesses, and they calculated the average. It was 1,197 pounds. The actual weight of the ox was 1,198 pounds. So the entire crowd was very close when you aggregate the data and average it out to the actual weight of the ox. And they went into detail to say, hey, look, this, the experts were actually further off. Again, I didn't really believe it until a few years ago, using software to do a mass study. Over 3,500 people were actually looked at, and look at Penelope the cow. And as you can see quite clearly, there is a massive range a massive range going on. However, the average guess was 1287 pounds and Penelope's weight was 1355. Crowd power, team power was more important than the individual. But here's where it gets interesting. When we looked at the specialists, the experts, yes, the deviation was less. As you can clearly see, they're closer from that kind of average. But their average was 1272. Further away. And I find that fascinating. These are butchers, farmers. These are people that should know more closer to the weight of the average. But when you have specialists, they tend to overthink and think they're right, whereas a lot of normal people, we just tend to just go on gut feel. And the gut feel aggregated will give us a better average. Now, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because as we're starting to realize this moment's going on, we don't want groups of people anymore under a manager. So if you could guess which one's which, you have a common interest on the left, a common purpose on the right. On the left, we have individual accountability, individual goals. And on the right, we have mutual goals and mutual accountability. So which one? Which one is actually the team versus the group? Yeah. So the team, a true team, is a set of individuals that had a common goal and a common set of accountabilities. Why is this important? Not only the Penelope idea, but it's also around the collaborative nature of those people and how they actually will increase productivity, increase happiness, and therefore increase customer value at the end. We had some examples from Atlassian. So Atlassian last year, 2019, actually sacked all of the people that were basically had hero complexes, that weren't part of a team. Now, if you think that's crazy, then look at their productivity since then. They created good culture by focusing on supporting teams and not groups of people. The Navy SEALs have another common example that I like. So Navy SEALs, they get their KPIs of the amount of people who pass, but they can't decrease the barrier to actually pass in Navy SEALs. So they looked at some science and they went, you know what? What a great idea this will be. If we have Navy SEALs and we put the best people, potential people, inside every squad, they'll raise everybody up. What do you think happened? Less Navy SEALs went through. People dropped out. And they were perplexed. Yet if we look at the science, behavioral science, we can see why. Nobody wants to be part of a group with one person who is dominating and making everybody else look bad. People like to have people around them have similar skills and ability. That creates a unison between those people. And the whole point of Navy SEALs is that you have a team or a squad. So the next year they went, oh, this didn't work. So they put all the best together and all the worst together, still do far better than I would. And they actually had better results. More people actually went through and became Navy SEALs. Because when little Jimmy falls over, he doesn't feel guilty because his mate's also falling over and they're helping each other up. They're egging each other on. John, who's flipping amazing, doesn't hold back. He's competing against people in his own class. So the best people did even better, and the people who were most likely to actually fail were more likely to actually pass, which is quite cool. We can't understand this from the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We have our basic needs, and most of that especially in the first world countries, they are already met. We know they're already met. We have great systems of social welfare that allow us to feel comfortable, that we know that our shelter, food, and water are all met. We've moved out of that now. We know we've moved out of that. Now we need to work on psychological needs. And that's the belonging. That's feeling like we're part of something. Hence why a vision from an organization really helps to drive that. And we need to feel accomplished. Now, we can feel accomplished individually, or we can feel accomplished as a team. And I'm here to say that as a team makes more sense. So creating teamwork can give you a belonging. Having self-direction can give you esteem. And having mastery will allow you to self-actualize and receive your full potential. So we can really use business agility to actually allow people to reach their pinnacle, as long as they're intrinsically motivated to do so, hence the vision and hence the empowerment. So how do you become a team? How do you get a team up and running? Because I've heard many ways of doing it. Well, here's how I do it. I ensure that they have a common objective and they commit to it. If they don't commit to it, I tick the box group and I treat the whole situation different. If I can have a team commit to a common objective, I'll then have them ask themselves, how do we have diverse ways of thinking? How do we ensure that we have the right skill sets we need to deliver without dependencies? And I don't just mean technology dependencies. I mean dependencies overall. What does the value stream look like? And which skills do we need to come up with an idea and deliver it and see the customer smile at the end? And lastly, teams make decisions together and they feel safe to do so. And that's where psychological safety comes in. Psychological safety is talked about quite a bit, but when we really think about it, the most important thing about psychological safety is the ability for people to say things and adapt to changes while having that. If they don't feel safe, they won't say things, you won't potentially improve, and leaders have to step in. Very, very quickly, the 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Great book if you want to go read it. But we're going to quickly go over it. We have absence of trust, which can be caused by invulnerability. We have fear of conflict, which creates artificial harmony. Lack of commitment, which creates ambiguity. And avoidance of accountability, which equals low standards. Low standards result in inattention to results, which are normally resolved by status and ego. Now, I quite like this book, and I'm a big fan of it. I don't want to go into too much detail in this lesson, but as you can see, they're kind of all linked, right? And why do they all link? They all link because if there's an absence of trust, then you're not going to feel free to actually have conflict. And if you can't have conflict, you're not going to commit. And if you're not going to commit, you're going to avoid the accountability. And then you're going to have no results. So if you want to fix one of those, try and find out where in the team things are breaking down, where these are just becoming a group of people, where they're all becoming I people, not we people. And that's kind of the key bit there. So the employee kept evolving, especially in the last 30, 40 years. Specialization is low motivation because it's not linked to the customer. It's a silo experience for the customer. So not only are we getting lower employee value, we're also getting lower customer value from specialization. But it costs less. But there's one thing, I guess, which again, remember, business agility is not for everybody. It really isn't for everybody. If you have an organization that works on commoditization, then you don't actually need to adapt. You just need to lower costs. But you also need the right employees that's what they actually want to do. What we promote is cognitive diversity. So team cross-functionality, so focusing on teams that are cross-functional and closer to the customer. So by removing those lines from the customer, you can have a great little agile team over here. And if they got 15 steps to the customer, they're not actually as motivated than if you bring all those people together and deliver straight to customer. If you can see a smiling face, you feel a lot better. That's a reward. That is more motivation than paying them more. Again, we don't want to drop specialization at all. We don't want to say now everyone's just a developer of value. We still need some specialization, especially as we go through this transition paradigm. But we're saying that cognitive diversity is more valuable. A good way of looking at this is if you do this test for psychology profiles and have a look at how many people are concrete sequential, abstract, etc. So for instance, I'm a concrete sequential person. What does it mean? I like facts and figures and I like linear processes. But if you have all of us in a team, I can guarantee you will come up with exactly the same solution. It's same with abstract randoms. Most of the entrepreneurs in the world are abstract randoms. And why they're abstract randoms? Because they tend to put things together and it kind of happens randomly. We won't get on. It's very hard to get on, shall I say. Some of my good friends are abstract randoms, and yes, they do actually frustrate me. But as long as you can empathize with them, it's okay. But this is an interesting way to look at how you can create diversity of thought. We also look at this in terms of the T-shaped person. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of T-shape, but it does give a good example of this. I-shape is all about being an expert in one thing. A generalist or a general manager is capable of a lot of things, but not expert in anything. And then T-shape is you have your specialization, but you can also help out in a whole bunch of other things. It's a good way of looking at it. It doesn't always work, and that's why I don't promote this as a massive tool, but it is a tool for your tool belt to get people to understand that yes, you can do a lot of these things. You are capable of it, but it may not be the most productive. Awesome. I hope you really enjoyed that lesson. Lesson 2 is on the business agility, definitions, values, and the radar that we use as part of this course. We've split this lesson for YouTube into 2 sections. You've just gone through strategic agility and cognitive diversity. Lesson 2B will be on customer centricity and employee empowerment. I look forward to seeing you then. Kia ora.